Captain Taith Voss pressed his scaled fingers against the cool metal of the observation deck railing, watching the debris field that used to be Kepler 442b drift past their ship like cosmic snow. 3 days ago, it had been a thriving world of 12 billion souls. Now was nothing but chunks of rock and ice, glowing with residual energy signatures that made his sensors scream warnings he didn't want to hear. Still nothing on long-range scans, Captain, reported Navigator Crix from behind him, her voice carrying that particular tremor that came from witnessing the impossible. Whatever did this, it's gone. Vanished. Like it was never here. Taith Voss didn't turn around. He'd seen enough terrified faces today. How long since the last transmission from the surface? 73 hours, 14 minutes, and 27 seconds. Crix's precision was admirable, considering her homeworld had been in the same sector. The emergency beacon cut out mid-sentence. Commander Hask was reporting, "Well, you heard the recording." Oh, he heard it all right. Hask's final words still echoed in his mind like a broken prayer. It's not a weapon. It's not a ship. It's something else entirely. Gods preserve us. It's eating the planet from the inside out, sir. Communications officer Yeld's voice crackled through the ship's intercom. We are receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Defense Council. They want to speak with you immediately. Taith Voss finally turned away from the debris field, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as they adjusted to the bridge lighting. The weight of command had never felt heavier than it did right now, with the ashes of a world drifting past his ship and the knowledge that whatever had done this was still out there, moving through space like some cosmic predator. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the stern features of Admiral Kothrex, his scarred mandibles clicking with barely contained anxiety. Behind him, the emergency session of the Defense Council was in full swing, with representatives from dozens of species arguing in languages that his translators struggled to parse. Captain Taith Voss. The Admiral's voice carried the weight of authority and desperation in equal measure. Report. Kepler 442b is gone, sir. Complete planetary destruction. No survivors detected. The energy readings are... Taith Voss paused, searching for words that could adequately describe what his instruments had recorded. They are unlike anything we have ever encountered. This wasn't orbital bombardment or stellar engineering. This was something else entirely. A murmur rippled through the assembled council members. Ambassador Quintel from the Arcturus Collective leaned forward, his translator device struggling with his rapid speech. How certain are you that this is the same phenomenon that destroyed Proxima Centauri C? 97% certain, Ambassador. The energy signatures match, the destruction pattern is identical, and the timeline. Taith Voss felt his throat sacs constrict. Whatever this is, it's moving toward the inner systems, toward the core worlds, toward Earth. He didn't say it out loud, but everyone in the chamber knew what he meant. The humans have been the newest members of the Galactic Alliance, barely 50 years since first contact, but they'd already proven themselves invaluable allies. Their adaptability, their stubborn refusal to accept defeat, their uncanny ability to find solutions to impossible problems. The Alliance needed them now more than ever. Captain, Admiral Kothrex's image flickered as interference from the debris field disrupted the transmission. You are to proceed immediately to the Sol system. We are evacuating all non-essential personnel from Earth and the colonies, but someone needs to coordinate with the human military. They are being typically human about the whole situation. Despite everything, Taith Voss felt his mandibles twitch in what passed for amusement among his species. What exactly does that mean, sir? It means they're not evacuating. They're digging in for a fight. The transmission cut out, leaving Taith Voss alone with his thoughts and the weight of cosmic responsibility. He turned back to the observation deck, watching the last fragments of Kepler 442b drift into the eternal darkness of space. Somewhere out there, something was destroying entire worlds with casual ease, and the only thing standing between it and Earth was whatever desperate plan the humans were cooking up that he'd seen humans fight before. He'd watched them turn impossible odds into unlikely victories through sheer bloody-minded determination and creative applications of violence, that made even seasoned warriors uncomfortable. But this was different. This wasn't an enemy you could shoot or outsmart or negotiate with. This was a force of nature. If nature had decided to become malevolent and develop a taste for planetary destruction. Navigator Crix, he called out, his voice carrying across the bridge with renewed purpose. Set course for the Sol system. Maximum burn. Sir, at maximum burn, we will arrive in 18 days. Our fuel reserves will be sufficient for the journey and whatever we find when we get there. Taithvos moved toward his command chair, feeling the familiar weight of decision settling on his shoulders. If the humans are planning to make a stand, they're going to need all the help they can get. As the stellar winds, engines roared to life, and the ship turned away from the graveyard that had once been a living world, Taithvos couldn't shake the feeling that he was racing toward humanity's finest hour, or their final stand. Major Tom, Bulldog, Harrison spat tobacco juice in his coffee cup and squinted at the tactical display that dominated the war room deep beneath NORAD. The holographic representation of the solar system hung in the air like a three-dimensional map of impending doom, with red markers indicating the last known positions of the thing that was systematically erasing civilizations from existence. So let me get this straight, he drawled, his Texas accent thick enough to cut with a knife. We have got something out there that can eat planets for breakfast. It's heading our way, and the best plan our alien friends can come up with is to run away with their tails between their legs. General Patricia, Iron Lady, Kane stood at the head of the briefing table, her silver hair pulled back in a regulation bun that somehow managed to look both professional and predatory. At 62, she'd seen 3 wars, 2 alien first contacts, and 1 very messy divorce that had made intergalactic headlines. Nothing surprised her anymore, except maybe the sheer audacity of what they were about to attempt. That's the size of it, Major, she replied, her voice carrying the kind of calm authority that came from years of telling impossible odds to go screw themselves. The Galactic Defense Council has officially designated Earth as a lost cause and is focusing their efforts on establishing a new defensive perimeter around the core worlds. And we told them to kiss our collective ass and watch how it's done. A chuckle rippled through the assembled officers, a sound that managed to be both grim and determined. These were the men and women who'd volunteered to stay behind when the evacuation ships launched. These were the people who'd looked at impossible odds and decided they didn't much care for the view. Doctor Elizabeth Specs, Morgan adjusted her glasses and leaned forward over her tablet, her fingers dancing across the screen as she pulled up another set of readings that made absolutely no sense according to conventional physics. The energy signatures we are detecting suggest that whatever this thing is, it's not bound by the same rules that govern normal matter. It phase shifts between dimensions, which explains how it can appear and disappear without warning. English, Doc, growled Sergeant Major Miguel Tank Rodriguez, his scarred hands folded across his barrel chest. What are we dealing with here? Think of it as a cosmic parasite, Dr. Morgan replied, her voice taking on the patient tone she usually reserved for explaining quantum mechanics to Marines. It feeds on planetary mass and energy, but it doesn't just destroy worlds, it absorbs them. Every planet it consumes makes it stronger, faster, more capable of finding its next meal. Major Harrison leaned back his chair, the springs creaking under his weight. So it's like a snowball rolling downhill, getting bigger and badder with every planet it gobbles up. Exactly. And based on the progression pattern, Earth is next on the menu. General Kane moved to the display, her fingers manipulating the holographic controls with practiced ease. The image zoomed in on Earth's orbital defenses, a network of weapon platforms, shield generators, and automated defense drones that represented humanity's best attempt at protecting their homeworld from external threats. Here's what we know, she began, her voice cutting through the room like a laser. This thing shows up, reality starts getting wonky, and then the planet turns into cosmic dust. We don't know how it does it, we don't know how to stop it, and we have got maybe 2 weeks before it arrives. So what's the plan, General? Asked Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Phoenix Park, her Korean accent barely detectable after 20 years of service. We can't outrun it, we can't hide from it, and conventional weapons don't seem to make a dent. Kane's smile was sharp enough to cut diamond. We're going to do what humans do best, Colonel. We're going to get creative, get nasty, and show this cosmic horror why you don't mess with Earth." She gestured to the display, and the image shifted to show a series of technical schematics that looked like they'd been designed by someone with a PhD in physics and a serious grudge against the laws of nature. "Project Godkiller," she announced. 3 weeks ago, it was just a theoretical weapons platform. Today, it's our only hope of stopping this thing before it turns our planet into space debris. Dr. Morgan cleared her throat nervously. "General, I should point out that the theoretical energy requirements for this project exceed our total global power output by a factor of 12. The technical challenges alone—" "Doc," Kane interrupted, her voice carrying the kind of gentle menace that made grown Marines check their life insurance policies. "I didn't ask if it was possible. I asked if you could build it." A moment of silence filled the room as Dr. Morgan stared at the schematics, her brilliant mind already racing through the possibilities and impossibilities of what they were proposing. Finally, she looked up with the kind of expression that meant either breakthrough or breakdown. "Give me every nuclear reactor on the planet, unlimited resources, and a team of the best engineers humanity has to offer," she said quietly. "And maybe, just maybe, we can give this thing the fight of its cosmic life." Major Harrison grinned, the expression transforming his weathered features into something that might have been handsome 20 years and 3 wars ago. "Now that's what I like to hear. When do we get started?" "We already have," Kane replied. "Every major population center is being evacuated as we speak. Critical personnel are being moved to hardened bunkers. And in 72 hours, we're going to find out if human ingenuity can trump cosmic horror." She turned to face the assembled officers, her gaze moving from face to face, reading the determination and resolve that burned in their eyes. These were the people who'd stood between humanity and extinction more times than anyone cared to count. These were the men and women who'd looked at impossible odds and decided they didn't much like the view. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying across the room with the weight of history, "we are about to attempt something that every rational analysis says is impossible. We are going to fight a force of cosmic destruction with human stubbornness, military-grade firepower, and enough spite to power a small star." The room fell silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant rumble of machinery that never stopped in the depths of NORAD. Finally, Sergeant Major Rodriguez spoke up, his voice carrying the kind of dark humor that came from years of facing impossible odds. "Well," he said with a grin that would have terrified Shark, "at least it won't be boring." The refugee ship Lasting Hope drifted through the void between stars, its hull scarred from hasty repairs and emergency launches that had saved lives but couldn't save worlds. Captain Maria Santos stood in the ship's cramped observation lounge, watching Earth grow larger in the forward screen as they approached humanity's last stand. Behind her, 5,000 refugees from 12 different worlds tried to find some measure of comfort in cramped quarters that had never been designed for long-term habitation. They were the lucky ones, the survivors who'd managed to escape before their worlds became cosmic dust. They were also the witnesses, the living proof of what was coming for Earth. "Captain Santos." The voice belonged to Kef Nor, a young engineer from Proxima Centauri C, whose family had died when his world was consumed. His translator struggled with human emotional inflection, but the pain in his voice needed no translation. "The Human Defense Fleet is requesting permission to dock. They want to interview survivors about the entity." Maria nodded without turning away from the screen. Earth looked so small from this distance, so fragile and blue and utterly unprepared for what was coming. She'd seen what happened to worlds that try to fight this thing. She'd watched civilizations that had survived for thousands of years get snuffed out like candles in a hurricane. "Tell them yes," she said quietly, "but warn them that what we saw, what we experienced, is not going to give them much comfort." An hour later, she found herself sitting across from a human military officer whose name tag read Harrison, and whose eyes held the kind of steady determination that she'd seen in soldiers who knew they were walking into a suicide mission but were going anyway. "Tell me about Kepler 442b, he said without preamble, his voice carrying a Texas drawl that somehow managed to be both casual and intense. What did you see? Maria closed her eyes for a moment, remembering. It started with the children, she said softly. They began having nightmares about something calling to them from the dark between stars. Then the animals started acting strange, fleeing cities, gathering in large groups, like they knew something was coming. How long between the first signs and... Harrison gestured vaguely, letting the question hang in the air. 72 hours. From the first nightmare to complete planetary destruction. Maria opened her eyes and met his gaze directly. Major, I have seen war. I have seen natural disasters and plagues and political upheavals that destroyed entire civilizations. This wasn't any of that. This was surgical, precise, like watching a surgeon remove a tumor, except the tumor was our entire world. Harrison leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. The energy readings our sensors picked up suggest some kind of dimensional manipulation. Reality distortion. Did you observe anything like that? Reality distortion, Maria repeated, her voice hollow with memory. Major, for the last 6 hours before the planet died, the laws of physics became suggestions. Gravity worked sideways. Time moved in circles. People aged decades in minutes or became children again. The ocean fell upward into the sky while the sky rained earth and stone. She stood up and moved to the small window that looked out at Earth's defensive perimeter, watching the patrol ships move in formation around weapon platforms that bristled with enough firepower to sterilize continents. You want to know what scared me the most? She asked, not turning around. It wasn't the destruction. It wasn't watching billions of people die. It was the moment I realized that whatever was doing this, it was playing with us, like a child pulling the wings off insects. There was intelligence behind it, but not the kind of intelligence that cares about life or death or suffering. What kind of intelligence? Harrison's voice was quiet now. Professional curiosity mixed with the growing understanding of what they were truly facing. The kind that sees entire civilizations as food. The kind that could destroy a world instantly, but chooses to drag it out because the terror and despair make the meal taste better. Maria turned back to face him, her expression haunted by memories that would never fade. Major, I have talked to survivors from 6 different worlds. The pattern is always the same. Fear, confusion, reality breakdown, and then nothing. Harrison was quiet for a long moment, processing what she'd told him. Finally, he looked up with the kind of expression that belonged on someone who'd just been handed an impossible mission and decided to accept it anyway. Ma'am, I appreciate your candor. It's going to help us prepare for what's coming. He stood up and moved toward the door, then paused. Just one more question. In all your observations, all the survivor accounts you have heard, did this thing ever show any signs of vulnerability? Any moments where it seemed, I don't know, off balance? Maria thought for a moment, searching through memories of horror and despair for anything that might give Earth's defenders hope. Finally, she nodded slowly. Once, on Kepler 442b, during the final hours, there was a moment when the reality distortions flickered, like static on a screen. It only lasted a few seconds, but for those few seconds, everything went back to normal. Physics worked the way it was supposed to. Time moved forward. Gravity pointed down. What caused it? That's just it, Major. We never figured it out. But whatever it was, it caught that thing off guard. For just a moment, it was surprised. Maria met his eyes directly. If there's hope for Earth, that's where you'll find it. In the moment when this cosmic horror realizes that humans don't play by anyone's rules but their own. Harrison's grin was sharp and predatory. Ma'am, that might just be the best news I have heard all week. As he left the observation lounge, Maria turned back to the window and watched Earth's defenders preparing for the fight of their lives. She'd seen what was coming for them, had witnessed the casual destruction of worlds that had stood for millennia. But for the first time since her own world had died, she felt something she hadn't expected to feel again. Hope. Maybe it was something about the way the human officer had smiled when she mentioned surprising the entity. Maybe it was the sheer audacity of a species that looked at cosmic horror and decided to stand their ground. Or maybe it was simply the recognition that if anyone could find a way to win an unwinnable fight, it would be the stubborn, creative, endlessly adaptable humans who turned warfare into an art form and made peace through superior firepower and diplomatic strategy. Whatever happened in the next few days, it was going to be the kind of fight that legends were made of. The kind of last stand that would be remembered long after the stars themselves had burned out, if anyone survived to remember it. The thing that devoured worlds had no name for itself, because names were concepts invented by creatures that lived and died in the blink of an eye. It was hunger given form, entropy with purpose, the inevitable end of all things that had grown tired of waiting for natural cosmic decay to feed IT sensed the small blue world ahead, tasting the electromagnetic signatures of civilization, the sweet fear scent of billions of conscious minds preparing for extinction. This one will be different from the others. This one fought back. Amusing, the entity had consumed 17 worlds in this sector alone, each one following the same predictable pattern. First came denial, then bargaining, then desperate attempts at evacuation, and finally the delicious moment when hope died and despair became the dominant flavor. This little blue world was broadcasting defiance instead of surrender, and that made the meal all the more appetizing. IT began to phase into normal space-time, reality bending around its presence like light around a black hole. The laws of physics started to flex in preparation for the feast to come. Dr. Elizabeth Morgan stood in the heart of Project Godkiller's main facility, a massive underground complex that had been carved out of the Rocky Mountains in record time. Around her, the greatest minds of human science worked with the desperate intensity of people who knew they had one shot to save their species. Power levels are at 93% and climbing, called out Dr. James Rocket Patel from the primary control station. Fusion reactors 1 through 15 are online and stable. The exotic matter containment field is holding steady. Dimensional resonance frequency locked, added Dr. Amanda Wave Chun from the quantum mechanics station. We are getting some interesting readings from the probability matrix. Whatever this thing is, it's already starting to affect local space-time. Elizabeth nodded grimly as she watched the main display show Earth's defensive perimeter. The alien ship Stellar Wind had arrived 3 days ago, and Captain Tathvos had been invaluable in helping them understand the threat they were facing. Unfortunately, understanding it didn't make it any less terrifying. Dr. Morgan, came General Kane's voice through the intercom. We are detecting spatial anomalies at the edge of the solar system. It's here. Elizabeth felt her stomach drop as she looked at the readings streaming across her screens. The entity wasn't just approaching Earth. It was already beginning to digest local reality, turning the space around Neptune into something that made her instruments scream in protest. How long do we have? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Based on the rate of reality breakdown, maybe 6 hours before it reaches Earth's orbit, replied Dr. Patel. But Elizabeth, the energy signatures we are detecting, they're orders of magnitude stronger than anything we have seen before. This thing has been feeding on entire civilizations for who knows how long. Elizabeth moved to the communication console and opened a channel to every military installation on Earth. This is Dr. Morgan at Godkiller Central. All stations, we are officially a condition red. Repeat, we are a condition red. All personnel to battle stations. May whatever gods you believe in have mercy on us all. Major Tom Harrison stood in the command center of the orbital defense platform Defiant, watching the tactical display as reality itself began to unravel at the edges of the solar system. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he kept sipping it anyway, because normal habits were all that kept him sane when facing the impossible. Sir, called out Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the sensor station. We are getting readings that don't make sense. Space-time is fluctuating around Neptune's orbit. Gravity is pulling in 17 different directions simultaneously, and time dilation is creating temporal echoes. English, Lieutenant, Harrison replied, though he was beginning to understand that English might not have words for what they were dealing with. It's like reality is being rewritten in real time, sir. The fundamental forces of physics are becoming optional. Harrison activated his communication system and opened a channel to all defense platforms. All units, this is Defiant Actual. The bogey is in system and actively screwing with the laws of physics. Maintain formation and prepare to engage on my command. Remember, we are not just fighting for Earth. We are fighting for the right of reality to make sense. Through the reinforced window of the command center, he could see the other defense platforms maintaining their positions around Earth. 12 massive stations, each one bristling with weapons that could crack continents and shields that could deflect stellar radiation. Humanity's best attempt at giving cosmic horror a bloody nose. Sir, Kim's voice carried a note of barely controlled panic. The entity it's not just moving through space. It's rewriting space as it goes, creating its own version of physics. And sir, it's accelerating. Harrison checked his tactical display and felt his blood run cold. The thing was moving faster than should have been possible, reality bending around it like water around stone. At this rate, it would reach Earth in less than 2 hours. All stations, prepare for emergency acceleration of the timeline, he broadcast. We are moving to Phase 2 immediately. Aboard the Stellar Wind, Captain Taithvos watched the approaching entity with the kind of horrified fascination that came from witnessing something that should not exist. His ship's sensors were feeding him data that violated everything he knew about physics, biology, and the fundamental nature of reality itself. Captain, Navigator Crix's voice was tight with terror. The entity it's not just one thing. It's a collection of absorbed civilizations, entire worlds folded into its structure. I'm detecting quantum signatures from 17 different species, all of them integrated into its consciousness. Taithvos felt his throat sacs constrict as the implications hit him. This wasn't just a cosmic predator. It was a graveyard of civilizations, a living monument to entropy and destruction that carried the absorbed essence of every world it had consumed. Open a channel to the Human Defense Command, he ordered. They need to know what they are really facing. General Kane's image appeared on the holographic display, her expression grim but determined. Captain, we are tracking the entity's approach. Do you have any additional intelligence that might help us? General, this entity isn't just consuming your world. It's planning to add humanity to its collective consciousness. Every civilization it has absorbed is still alive inside it, aware but powerless. If it succeeds, the human species will become part of its digestive process for eternity. Kane's expression didn't change, but Taithvos saw something flicker in her eyes. Not fear, but rage. Cold, calculated, military-grade rage. Captain, thank you for the intelligence. Now if you will excuse me, I have a cosmic horror to disappoint. The channel closed, leaving Taithvos alone with his thoughts and the growing certainty that humanity was about to attempt something that would either save their species or doom them to a fate worse than extinction in the depths of the Sahara Desert. Former arms dealer turned reluctant hero Marcus, Viper, Blake crouched behind a sand dune, watching the sky through military-grade binoculars. The stars were wrong, not just in the wrong positions, but wrong in ways that made his eyes water and his brain itch. Well, this is new, he muttered to himself, adjusting the focus on his binoculars. Usually when I'm about to die horribly, it's because someone's shooting at me, not because reality is having a nervous breakdown. Behind him, his hand-picked team of mercenaries and military contractors checked their weapons with the kind of professional calm that came from years of facing impossible odds for money. They followed him from conflicts across 3 continents, trusting his ability to keep them alive in situations that should have killed them all. Boss, called out Jackson Boom Williams, his demolitions expert. You sure about this plan? Because it sounds like we're trying to kill God with conventional explosives. Not kill, Marcus replied, lowering his binoculars. Annoy. There's a difference. And besides, conventional explosives are just the opening act. The real show starts when the eggheads activate their doomsday device. His communication device crackled to life with General Kane's voice. Viper team, this is command. Entity is now in system and approaching Earth. You are authorized to begin Phase 3 operations. Marcus grinned, the expression transforming his scarred features into something that might have been handsome if it wasn't so predatory. Roger that, Command. Time to show this cosmic horror why you don't mess with Earth. He turned to his team, his voice carrying the kind of authority that came from years of leading people into impossible situations and bringing most of them home alive. Gentlemen, we are about to attempt something that every rational analysis says is suicide. We are going to get the attention of a force of cosmic destruction using military-grade firepower and human stubbornness. Questions? Yeah, called out Rodriguez, his sniper. What's our extraction plan? Extraction plan? Marcus laughed, the sound carrying across the desert like a challenge to the universe itself. Son, if this works, we will be heroes. If it doesn't work, we will be part of the cosmic horror's digestive system. Either way, we won't need extraction. The team exchanged glances, then nodded with the kind of grim determination that came from following a leader who'd never let them down, even when the odds were impossible. Light it up, boys, Marcus ordered. Let's give this thing something to think about. Dr. Morgan watched the main display as Project Godkiller reached full power, the exotic matter containment field humming with barely contained energy that could either save Earth or crack it in half. Around her, the greatest minds of human science worked with desperate precision, knowing that one mistake would end their species. Dimensional resonance at maximum output, reported Dr. Chun. We are creating a localized reality field that should disrupt the entity's ability to manipulate space-time. Fusion reactors are redlined but stable, added Dr. Patel. We are drawing power from every nuclear facility on the planet. If this doesn't work, we will have about 10 minutes before the power grid collapses. Elizabeth nodded, her attention focused on the quantum mechanics readings that were showing her things that shouldn't exist. The entity was less than an hour away from Earth's orbit, and reality was already beginning to bend around its presence. All stations, this is Godkiller Central, she broadcast. We are initiating final countdown sequence. T-minus 60 seconds to activation. Through the facility's reinforced windows, she could see the night sky beginning to ripple like water, stars shifting position as the fundamental forces of physics became suggestions rather than laws. The entity's approach was turning Earth's local space into something that made her instruments scream warnings she didn't want to hear. 30 seconds, she announced. All personnel, prepare for dimensional displacement. The countdown continued, each second feeling like an eternity as humanity prepared to either save their world or destroy it trying. In the distance, Marcus Blake's team was lighting up the sky with enough firepower to level mountains, trying to get the entity's attention and, by the scientists, a few more precious seconds. 10 seconds, Elizabeth called out. 9, 7, the entity noticed the explosions, its attention shifting from Earth's approach to the small group of humans who were actively shooting at it. For just a moment, it paused, curious about creatures that would attack something so obviously beyond their ability to harm. 3, 2, 1, fire. Project Godkiller activated with a sound like reality tearing in half. The exotic matter containment field collapsed in a controlled implosion, releasing energies that existed in 17 different dimensions simultaneously. The dimensional resonance field expanded outward at the speed of light, creating a bubble of stable space-time around Earth. The entity hit the field like a cosmic freight train hitting a wall of solid physics. For the first time in its existence, it encountered something that refused to be rewritten, a pocket of reality that insisted on following its own rules regardless of what cosmic horror wanted at IT was surprised. Major Harrison felt the defiant shake as the entity's reality field collided with Earth's dimensional barrier. The tactical display showed energies that his instruments couldn't properly measure, forces that existed in too many dimensions for normal sensors to track. Status report, he barked. The field is holding. Lieutenant Kim reported, her voice filled with amazement. The entity it's stuck. It can't phase through the barrier. Harrison looked at the main display and saw something that made him grin like a shark. The cosmic horror that had consumed 17 worlds was pressed against Earth's dimensional barrier like a bug against a windshield, its reality-warping abilities neutralized by humanity's refusal to accept that physics was optional. All weapons, target the entity, he ordered. Let's see how this thing handles good old-fashioned human firepower. 12 orbital defense platforms opened fire simultaneously, launching everything from nuclear warheads to exotic particle beams at the trapped entity. The creature's shields, designed to deflect cosmic forces and dimensional attacks, were utterly unprepared for the straightforward brutality of human weapons. For the first time in eons, the entity felt pain. Captain Taithvos watched in amazement as the human defense fleet systematically dismantled something that had consumed entire civilizations. The entity's reality field was fluctuating, its control over local space-time breaking down under the assault of weapons that simply refused to acknowledge that they shouldn't be able to hurt it. Impossible brete de navigateur X. They are actually winning. Not winning, Taithvos corrected, his voice filled with admiration. They are doing something much more impressive. They're teaching a cosmic horror that there are rules in this universe, and humanity gets to decide what those rules are. On the tactical display, the entity was beginning to retreat, its form flickering between dimensions as it tried to escape the pocket of stable reality that Earth had become. But the dimensional barrier held, trapping it in a universe where physics worked the way they were supposed to, and human weapons could hurt things that shouldn't be able to be hurt. The entity's death throes were spectacular, reality rippling outward as absorbed civilizations were finally released from their cosmic prison. Taithvos' sensors detected the quantum signatures of 17 different species, their consciousness finally free to move on to whatever came after existence. And in the center of it all, Earth continued to orbit its star, protected by a dimensional barrier that insisted on following the laws of physics and defended by a species that had looked at cosmic horror and decided it wasn't impressed. Dr. Morgan stood in the ruins of Project Godkiller's control room, watching the readings that confirmed what her instruments could barely believe. The entity was gone, dissolved into component energies that would take millions of years to coalesce into anything threatening. Earth was safe, protected by a dimensional barrier that would fade in a few days, but it served its purpose. "Status report," she called out, her voice hoarse from hours of shouting orders over the sound of reality being rewritten. "Fusion reactors are shutting down safely," reported Dr. Patel. "Power grid is stabilizing. The dimensional field is dissipating according to projections." "Casualties?" she asked. "Minimal," replied Dr. Chun. "A few cases of temporal displacement, some minor reality distortion sickness, but nothing permanent. We actually did it, Elizabeth. We killed a cosmic horror using physics and spite." Elizabeth sank into her chair, the weight of what they'd accomplished hitting her like a physical blow. They'd faced something that had destroyed civilizations that had existed for millennia, and they'd won using human stubbornness and the revolutionary concept that the laws of physics were not optional. "Dr. Morgan," came General Kane's voice through the intercom. "Congratulations. You and your team just saved the human species. How does it feel?" Elizabeth looked around at her exhausted colleagues, at the smoking ruins of equipment that had pushed the boundaries of science beyond anything previously imagined, at the readings that confirmed Earth was safe and the entity was gone. "General," she said with a tired smile, "it feels like Tuesday." Marcus Blake stood in the desert, watching the sky return to normal as the entity's reality field dissipated. His team had expended enough ammunition to level a small country, and they probably caused more cosmic property damage than any mercenary unit in history. "Boss," called out Jackson Williams, "did we just help kill a cosmic horror?" "Yep," Marcus replied, lighting a cigarette and taking a long drag. "Can't say that was on my career bucket list, but I will take it." His communication device crackled with General Kane's voice. "Viper team, mission accomplished. Outstanding work, gentlemen. The beer's on me when you get back to base." Marcus grinned, the expression visible even in the desert darkness. "Roger that, Command. Just another day at the office." As they packed up their equipment and prepared to head home, Marcus couldn't help but think about what they'd accomplished. They'd faced something that existed beyond normal comprehension, something that should have been impossible to fight, let alone defeat. and they'd won because they were human, and humans had a long history of refusing to accept that something was impossible just because it was impossible. The lasting hope drifted in Earth's orbit, its refugee passengers watching in amazement as the planet that had refused to evacuate celebrated its impossible victory. Captain Maria Santos stood in the observation lounge, tears streaming down her face as she watched the home of humanity's stubborn, brilliant, utterly impossible species continue to exist. Captain Kefnor approached her, his translator struggling with the emotional complexity of the moment. The humans, they actually did it. They destroyed the entity that consumed our worlds. They did more than that, Maria replied, her voice filled with wonder. They proved that there are still things in this universe worth fighting for. They showed us that sometimes the impossible is just another word for hasn't been tried yet. Through the window, Earth spun peacefully in its orbit, protected by the same stubborn refusal to accept defeat that had carried humanity to the stars. The entity was gone, destroyed by a species that had looked at cosmic horror and decided it wasn't particularly impressed. In the distance, Captain Taithvas's ship was already broadcasting the story to the Galactic Alliance, spreading the news that Earth had accomplished the impossible. The human species had faced extinction and responded by rewriting the rules of engagement. And somewhere in the cosmic deep, other entities that fed on civilizations paused in their endless hunger, sensing that something fundamental had changed in the universe. There was a new player in the galactic community, a species that didn't believe in impossible odds and had the firepower to back up their optimism. Earth had survived its first encounter with cosmic horror. It wouldn't be the last, but humanity had established a precedent that would echo through the stars for generations to come. Sometimes the best defense against the impossible was to be more impossible than whatever was trying to kill you. And humanity had that particular strategy down to an art form.